asking you all to raise your hands if you've ever had an ordinary moment, whether it be sitting in a boring lecture, walking down an empty corridor, or even standing in a long queue, suddenly become unforgettable. Not a dramatic movie scene, not a life or death situation, just something small, but it stuck with you, quietly shaping the way you think. That is where I want to begin, with those ordinary moments. Because the theme that we have, the alchemy of ideas, sounds so big, doesn't it? Almost intimidating. You imagine dramatic discoveries, bold visions, a flash of brilliance. But here is what I have come to realize. Transformations, they rarely happen in a single magical flash. Rather, they happen in the small, everyday moments, the kind we often tend to overlook. But what we actually need to do is give them the space to grow. One such moment for me happened during a history lecture. Yes, a history lecture. You know, the kind where the fan is spinning lazily overhead as the teacher is drifting somewhere between the Mughals and the treaty of something or the other. Being bored, I glanced at the person sitting next to me. He appeared to be doodling something that looked oddly like a surfboard. And suddenly, my brain went, surfing. I started thinking about the waves, how life sends them at us. Some small and gentle, some absolutely determined to knock us flat. And then it clicked. Surfing is not about avoiding the waves, it is about learning how to ride them. You expect to fall sometimes, but then you get right back up. And isn't that exactly what we do in school, in competitions, in life? It was such a quick, fleeting thought, but it has stayed with me for months now. And it is almost like a secret lens that I carry around in my pocket. Let me pause here and show you something. This piece of paper right here, it looks ruined, right? Messy, wrinkled, not worth much. But here is the thing. If I smooth it out, fold it differently, it can still carry words, drawings, even a story. That is what ideas are like. They often arrive crumpled, half formed, ordinary. But if we hold on to them, shape them, they can still carry meaning. And that is exactly why that silly little surfboard doodle mattered. It too was a crumpled scrap of thought that I could have thrown away easily. But when I unfolded it, it turned out to be something entirely else, a way for me to see resilience. Another alchemy came during something far less dreamy, morning assembly duty. As a part of the student council, I was often given the task to conduct the morning assemblies. It had always been a very mechanical process for me. Pick the prayer, choose yet another video on climate change, and wrap up before anyone starts yawning. So one morning, while I was searching for the topic for the next assembly, a younger student came up to me. Yes, younger than me. She hesitated and then said, Didi, could you speak about handling emotions? I have been feeling a little overwhelmed lately. That stopped me. This was not just a request, this was someone trusting me. So the next day, I did end up speaking about emotions, stress, the times I had felt it, the ways I used to manage it, and the fact that it is okay to not have everything figured out, to not have it all under control. After the assembly, a few more students came up to me and quietly thanked me. The assembly, which I had once treated as a job, a formality, had turned into a bridge, a way to tell people, you belong here and you are not alone. Alright, since we've gotten a little emotional now, let us do an experiment together. What did you feel in that silence? For some of you, it was curious. For others, it was awkward. Maybe your mind started filling in the blank space with thoughts. That happens because silence is the blank canvas on which ideas can show up. We rush away from silence, but sometimes the quiet is where an idea first whispers. The alchemy, it often begins there. But, my friends, that is not to say that you require a soundproof room in order to have an otherworldly transformation. An idea, a change, it can come in the noisiest and messiest corners of our lives. I still remember walking into a moot court competition convinced that we were going to nail it. I had my notes, my arguments, my cross questions planned down to the very last line. But then reality hit. My teammates, they were not on the same page. One of them kept forgetting her arguments. The other, he was more interested in scrolling than rehearsing. And our patience, it was getting thinner than the paper our scripts were printed on. You know, one of those moments where you feel like grabbing all the work and saying, fine, I'll do it myself. That was me. But sitting amidst that chaos, it made me realize that if I gave into that frustration, it would only make things worse. So instead of snapping, I tried something different. I listened, adjusted, and encouraged everyone to lean on their strengths. One of them, who was not great at memorizing, was actually brilliant at quick thinking. So I let her handle the rebuttals. The other, who could not manage eye contact, had neat legal references. So he prepped the citations. I'll be honest, it was not perfect, and it required every bit of patience that I had in me. But that day I learned that leadership is not about control. It is about listening, adjusting, and letting everyone else's strengths shine through. And that, I think, is the alchemy of ideas in action. What began as pure irritation, annoyance, like base metal that weighs you down, had transformed into the gold of patience and teamwork. Frustration, it had turned into growth. And yes, I'll admit, sometimes my brain connects things in ways that makes people look at me funny. Comparing assemblies to bridges, surfboard doodles in a history lecture, or even wondering whether the alchemists wanted a better jewelry collection. But I think that there is something important in that whimsy. Because alchemy, it is not about seeing the world exactly as it is. It is about daring to see it as what it could be. And sometimes the most whimsical questions lead to the deepest shifts. Now, alchemists in the Middle Ages believed that they could transform base metals like lead into gold. Everyone thought it was impossible. And it was, at least literally, but the metaphor is powerful. Because what if alchemy is not about melting metals in a furnace, but about taking your raw, unpolished moments and transforming them into something meaningful, something that shines? That to me is the alchemy of ideas, and I've stumbled across it in very unexpected places. But here comes the challenge. Our world, it does not always leave room for such transformations. We live in a time that is constantly rushing. Timetables, deadlines, notifications, everything around us screams faster, faster, and faster. But here is the thing. You cannot turn an idea into gold if you don't give it enough time in the fire. And if you think about it, the most meaningful transformations, they rarely happen in a rush. They happen when we pause long enough to notice a doodle, a conversation, or even a crumpled piece of paper. So maybe the real alchemy isn't just about new ideas. Maybe it is about protecting the quiet space where small, fragile ideas can grow. So, how do we practice this practically? Well, first, notice, catch the doodle, hear the shy question, then save, put that messy thought somewhere. a note, a folder, a page that you don't trash, then return. Revisit those scraps. Reflect on that question because it could just uncover the idea that you needed. And last of all, pause. Allow the ideas to breathe and transform. In a world that is constantly rushing, pausing becomes revolutionary. So, maybe the question is not when will my big transformation come? Maybe it is which small moment am I overlooking right now? Because the truth is, each one of us is carrying base metals in our pockets, overlooked duties, frustrations, routines, and each one of us has the chance to turn them into something golden. The alchemists may have never found their formulas, but in our own small ways, we already have. Thank you.